Hey all, TT Neil talking to you about writerly things, language, storytelling, science fiction, uh, cyberpunk yet again. I can't ever get that out of my head. Um, you know, one of the things about cyberpunk that make it so interesting and appealing, even as a cautionary tale or a dystopian tale, is this prevalence or continuance of consumer culture in some fashion. The idea that you can get a new pair of eyes or a new body, new set of lungs, a new heart. It's just pick, shop and pick. There you go. And it's interesting as a social critique, this idea of the full commodification of human nature, the human spirit. And everything's for sale. And everything can be had if you have enough money. If you're enough of a hustler, you can get that. And it's quite incendiary when you really unpack it a little bit. Because on the face of it, you say, oh, that's cool, man. I can get like some cyber eyes. I'll be slamming. I can do this. I can do that. Everything's available for the right price. And there is embedded in that a critique of consumer culture and the idea that everything is for sale. And that's haunting when you really scratch past the neon and the chrome and think about a person's life where they have no real life except wrapped up in the hustle culture and what they can acquire, who they can get the drop on, what schemes of others they can participate in to land some kind of haul, and while at the same time staying alive and not getting killed. You know, it's not a way of life that anybody really who's sensible and not desperate would want to have. So the characters who exist in a true cyberpunk kind of universe, they're living lives that I think people today would be like, I don't want to really live that life. I don't want to have to work these hustles and scams. I just want to be able to live in peace and relative comfort and not be running for my life down an alley pursued by raging gangs who want to capture me and then harvest my organs for a profit. Nobody wants to live in that space. And yet cyberpunk throws this neon and chrome and this definitely glitzy dystopian neo-noir vibe around that kind of world, which makes it fun to explore. And I fully agree with that. It's entertaining, the permutations of that. But it does offer, and this is, I think, probably why people are reacting to it more now than even when it first came out. I mean, when it first came out in the early 80s, that was a certain, I guess what I could say is that the foundations of, and I'm speaking largely from an American perspective, American society, the foundations weren't cracking and crumbling in the 80s. Yeah, you had Reagan inflicting his toxic ideology on the country, seemingly without consequence, which is pretty jarring, with the kind of multi-generational downstream effects of what he was doing, affecting us even today. But you had these cyberpunk writers or neo-romantics doing these stories, which were from a position of relative comfort. Writing still mattered in the early 80s. Books still mattered before we careened into this digitized world where fewer and fewer people read, more people just interact through media like this. And before the social fabric started to really unravel. So it's interesting because Cyberpunk offered that glimpse and that awareness of that peril that we all face at a time when people weren't really fully on board with what it represented. And nowadays, and this is, I think, why that relevance is there now, is it's so much clearer, coming to much sharper focus, just the peril that we are in. The idea that billionaires can just engage in whatever they want to do, and apparently nobody will stop them. And the idea of government being the plaything of the powerful, which on the face of it, it always has been on some level. I know that. But there was at least a civic framework for how a society should operate versus the bedlam of a society where those civic spaces were undone and destroyed. So cyberpunk, curiously, is incredibly relevant now, far more so than when it first came out, because of the damage to our society by these unfettered forces, what people like to call late-stage capitalism. And the idea of everyone being for sale, everything being up for grabs, of grotesque disparities of wealth, and people being left behind, and the human spirit being a commodified item that you're wagering for your existence, that you're putting that on the table to parlay that into riches, ideally, or death if things don't go your way, and that death doesn't really matter because there's plenty more of you to go around. Those are significant and thematically relevant, and I think it offers a really good there are still cautionary tales and lessons to be learned, and let's hope that we learn those before we really do throw ourselves deeply into a dystopian cyberpunk kind of world, because as entertaining as it may be, if you're just kind of glancing through it, you wouldn't really want to live in such a situation. Not day to day, not forever. Oh, grandma sold one of her kidneys today. It's like, that's not a victory. That's not a triumph. So there's that.